Hi.
Hi.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first debut episode of APAC Change Insider. If you're watching us now, congratulations. You've logged into one of the most interesting, I would say, change discussion panel that we see going around since the COVID times. My name is Laura Cozijnsen, one of the instigators of the program. Hello，女士们、先生们，欢迎你们收看我们 APAC Change Insider。那今天呢，我们大概是1个小时的时间，会跟你们讨论，在我们现在肺炎的状况底下，我们对于改变的一些看法。咁多位來賓，歡迎大家咧睇我哋 APAC Change Insider。咁如果你 log in 緊嘅話咧，代表你睇緊其中一個我覺得非常之好睇咧，亦都好 interesting 嘅一個 program。因為我哋咧就會因為肺炎啦 COVID-19，所以有呢一個節目，希望同大家咧從一個比較深入嘅角度咧去睇下到底改變係有啲咩嘅。And we'll be doing the session today in English, so thank you everyone for tuning in. I would like to introduce you to my co-creator, Mei Wai Wong, who is logging in from Singapore. Mei Wai, would you like to say hi to people?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Wong Mei Wai. I'm the founder, CEO, and Chief Change Catalyst of APAC Global Advisory.
Going back to our topic today, why don't I start by asking my co-creator, what do we hope to achieve with APAC Change Insider, ACI? What is this about?
Okay, nice question. Well, when Laura and I first discussed APAC Change Insider and launching this, our purpose was to have that commitment to help organizations and individuals navigate through change during the pandemic period. And why did we call it Insider? For the very reason that we felt we could bring three very differentiated aspects to all of you. Firstly, the inside view, which Laura talked about through the lens of the INSEAD Business School EMC and the psychodynamics that Laura spoke about. Secondly, Insider also from the perspective of market research, insights and findings, speaking to other handpicked experts that we feel can help you, and our selection of CEOs and C-suites in Asia Pacific who we feel have led change during the COVID period. Thirdly, the insider perspective would be key insights from Laura as well as my own insider personal journey that we are taking, as well as our consulting, training, and coaching in Asia Pacific.
Well, indeed, I think no one would object by saying 2020 is a year of change for everybody, from personal, from organization or cities or country level. Well, before we dive into the core of today's session, I would like to introduce everyone to the duration and logistics of our program today. So if you're logging on to our program through your registration link, you should be seeing on your screen on the left-hand side would be the live stream view. You are seeing right now Laura calling in from Hong Kong and Mei Wai calling in from Singapore. And on the right-hand side, what you would see is a box whereby you can input your questions, your comments, or anything that you would like to say to us. And during the entire session of 1 hour, if you have any questions that you would like to ask us, do feel free to utilize the chat box. Or if for whatever reason you have a question that you feel would like to be answered but could not be addressed in the interest of time, we will be leaving you 2 email addresses for you to reach us. And please do send us your emails or your messages, and we will be allocating the question or the comments to the relevant speaker or the relevant organization. So Mei Wai, I understand that we have quite a lot of friends from different regions. We would like to find out something, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's so exciting. When I looked at the list this morning, we were looking at people from all over APAC and even beyond UK, US, even Africa. So What I thought would be nice is for everybody, and if you want to remain anonymous, that's fine. Just put anonymous, just type in the country that you are calling in from, and we would love to see who's in and who's not in yet.
Okay, that's right. Well, now just a bit of a practice. We could utilize the chat box on the right-hand side. Tell us where you're calling in from or where you're watching from. And for example, if I were to say, I would say that I'm watching from Hong Kong, or I'm calling in from Hong Kong, and I'm calling in from home. So please do in the chat box, let us know where you're calling in from and where you're watching from. So we kind of have a community going on, understanding where everybody is coming in from. Well, I see, oh, someone in from Vietnam and Singapore.
Oh,
How exciting. And of course, yes, from Hungary and from Thailand. Welcome, everyone. Well, since we've got such a good crowd, I think we should start by beginning our session for the day, Mei Wai, shall we?
yes.
Okay, let's look
Let's do
at the
that.
topic for the
Okay.
day.
All right.
All right, welcome to the session of the sharing of the topic of the first episode of APAC Change Insider. Well, as you will probably already know, when you register, you would have a glimpse of the topic, which is on the pulse of the new normal, unfolding change in APAC consumer behavior on the ground. So, really, what we would like to look at is there is a lot of change and discussion, there is a lot of change expected, there's a lot of change that has happened. But really, from a more macro perspective, what is the pulse on the ground about consumer behavior? Like Mei Wai and I self shared earlier on, we both work in the region and we used to travel quite a bit and we work with clients across the Southeast Asian region and beyond. But then now both of us are homebound, which would mean that our consumer behaviors definitely would have changed. So, in order to lead on to the question and the topic for the day, why don't we begin by sharing, both of us, what is the consumer behavior change that we observe, both as a consumer or as a consultant? Why don't you go first, Mei Wai?
Sure, Laura. Basically, where I am and where my clients are, what I see is that the pandemic has led to consumers, including myself, to truly reappraise our needs during this time. And hence, it's actually impacted my beliefs in many areas, my behaviors, my choices that I make across categories. And, even this is being seen across the countries where my clients are working in. And in turn, when we reappraise our our beliefs as well, we will reappraise our brands that we used to love, or brands we think we are not bothered with, categories, service, product choices that we need, and definitely it would impact our purchase intent and our final purchases. So, if I were to boil down, because today I'm aware we have people from the travel industry, from food and beverage, electrical, a number of technology people, even people in banking, etc. To discuss this, I think one thing that boils down across all the diverse industries is that we have to face the fact that the pandemic disruption has affected our CX journey, or what we call the customer experience journey, due to the change of consumer behavior. And that's one of the reasons why Laura and I has picked this topic to be the start. For those who are not so familiar, the customer experience refers to how a company or brand engages with its customers across every single touch point, and the total sum of all the interactions deliver the experience to your clients, or the brand delivers the experience. So when we talk about customer, we're not just talking about customers who are the external customers who purchase your products or services. We are also talking about internal customers who are really important. These are our teams, our talents, our leaders, our employees, and stakeholders. So when I said that the pandemic has actually affected our CX journey, Laura, I meant that they are taking different paths. They are redrawing this because of the change of needs. It could be the heightened awareness of hygiene. It could be lower prioritization of other things, not being able to assess what they want, but they're redrawing their ways to get to what they want out there. And this is, in a sense, going to be like a disruptive effect. And let me share with you my viewpoint. You see, internally, what happens also is there are companies also restructuring very, very quickly. And you will see that it impacts our internal customers who, in fact, are external customers as well and have their external consumer journeys. So it's like a domino effect that goes round in the economies. So what I've been seeing on consulting side is that the initial part of reopening for the new normal, organizations were rushing to pivot again and then coming up with very quick solutions, as we can see, setting up e-commerce very quickly, trying to digitalize very quickly. However, by this point, most of them have kind of realized that it's going to be reactionary and temporary. It's not going to be a long-term solution here. So that's where we are, Laura, I would say. How about your side?
Thank you, Mei Wai. I think we have quite a few people who would like to say hi to us. In the chat box, we have Elko from the Netherlands, Vanessa, Vandana watching, David from Singapore, Marcus from Singapore.
Hi,
Um,
Marcus.
Anthony from Hong Kong on the sofa at home. I mean, we have a lot of good friends. So once again, very warm welcome to the first episode of APAC Change Insider. Mei Wai was just discussing how or what sort of consumer behavior change she's seeing as a consultant and on a personal level. Well, I would also share from first a professional level. I do see quite a bit of a differentiation in the brands that both some would be reacting and some would be responding. By reacting, I mean there are brands who are not ahead of the change and they would only communicate with consumers when they're being prompted or when they're being nudged or asked to. But there are also brands that are actually far ahead of the game, meaning they are responding to the change by taking more ownership and planning. So, say for instance, I was homebound for the previous week because Hong Kong is under wave 3, which is the most serious of the COVID hit. And I was ordering groceries online. I've waited for 2 weeks for my grocery to be delivered. And the thing is, just this morning, I got a message inside the delivery app that said, your delivery has been delayed. We will cancel and refund you. Do not worry. So, guess what? From a consumer perspective, I would be quite upset because I was expecting groceries to be delivered. So, I do not have to go to the supermarket to buy my own grocery. I could limit the time on the streets. But I would have guessed from the brand's level, they would have thought that they have done a good job in informing the consumer the fact that your groceries would be delivered. And then they're doing it in their own application with a message box. So I think this is an example of being non-responsive to the changes in the market, but maybe just being reactive. And I would also add another layer on the training and communication area, which is my love of the current times. That is, how do we train and learn to be better communicators? In the previous days, Mei Wai, people would talk to me and say, online training is second class. It's an option too. It's a nice to have. You can't achieve what you want to achieve via online learning. But then this morning we were just discussing even UK universities are offering pure online courses by choice. And for certain organizations, they're offering it some by choice and some by the fact that you cannot do face-to-face classes anymore. So I think just on the learning and training fund, we're seeing, in fact, there is a lot of room that could be developed on the online or digital side. We thought it could not be done, but then because of the change that's happening, we see sometimes those who are quite introverted in class are actually more active, or they are more participative if the classes or if the learning is being done online. So I think it's an amazing time to observe how organizations, how personal learning or consumers are changed by the environment itself. Some ahead of the game, but some are actually being chased after by the change. So I think these are interesting things that we have seen on the ground. And Mei Wai, I think it's
Yes.
time for us to invite our very important speaker for today, because we have our own COVID-19 research team leader calling in from Thailand. And in fact, she has over 20 years of qualitative and quantitative research experience. She also leads the COVID-19 research from Acorn Marketing and Research. So she will be telling us how 11 markets, how the consumers in these 11 markets are being shaped or are shaping consumer behavior. So why don't we now welcome Dolly, who will be sharing with us on the COVID-19 research of 11 markets. So let's roll the credits. Dolly, please.
Hello, thank you, Laura and Mei Wai, and good evening to all for this region, and perhaps good afternoon for UK or all other regions. So just quickly introduce myself. I'm Dolly. I'm actually country manager from our Acorn Thailand office. And I'm also our Group Acorn's regional COVID-19 research team leader, as she mentioned. So let's start my session then, if I may have my slides up, please. All right, so today I'll be walking you through our key research findings to assess the impact of COVID-19 on changes of Asian consumer behavior. But more importantly, we'll be discussing the notion of what new normal is and what are the implications for the consumers as well as some businesses. So, okay, next slide, please. So just quickly about Acorn, we are a marketing research and consulting company with our presence with direct offices in 11 key cities, as shown on the slide here, throughout the APAC region. So we kind of separate into Southeast Asia and then East Asia for our analysis in the full report as well. So recently we did our survey in our 11 key markets, and we just released this interesting report just last month in June. Just quickly in terms of the sample composition, we also did a demographic age representative sample. So we included the Gen Z right up to the boomers generation, or among those with 55 years old or higher. So, okay, so let's move into our key findings then. Next slide, please. So my first section, we will be looking at the impact of COVID-19 on consumers' attitudes. So on this slide, in terms of consumer sentiments, we actually asked our consumer how much they feel safe towards the COVID-19 situation in their respective countries. So if you can see on the positive end or top right-hand corner, Taiwan, China, Singapore, Vietnam, and Korea, these are the ones that have relatively higher safety index, where actually their government did take early preemptive and active measures to help curbing the COVID-19 situation. But on the other end, on slightly on your top left-hand corner, so these would be the one with perceived less safety and mainly include the Southeast Asian countries. But I think interestingly, if you look right at the end at the left-hand side, so the most who's felt unsafe, it's actually Japan from our regional analysis. So relative to other countries, we found that this may be the cultural value where perhaps Japanese are somewhat a little bit more pessimistic towards the situation, and they felt a bit uncertain about the cure for COVID-19. We did actually do a few follow-up studies to investigate on this, and still we found similar results. So anyhow, when we map the safety with required level of state control from consumers, those countries which feel more safe, Taiwan, China, Singapore, Vietnam, and Korea, actually they're reflected in their sentiments for the relaxation of the state control measures. So what we see here, the implications is actually the government's efforts, the transparency or the constant updates from the governments themselves do reflect in the consumers' confidence, actually. All right, moving on. All right. So we also asked our consumers on what are their top worries or concerns regarding the COVID-19. And as you can see here, the top one is economic recession. Actually, economic recession already started pre-COVID. We all faced global recession before this, but COVID-19 will possibly worsen, the recession throughout the year. So the implications here are consumers will be careful with their spending. They will need effective financial planning as well as saving schemes. But for brands, it may not necessarily mean should we cut our product prices? Because that would obviously affect your top line revenue and even perhaps deteriorate your brand in the longer term. So actually, at the end of the day, given the situation, consumers will still spend, but they will shift their priorities. So instead of consider price cutting, we could consider doing pricing study, trade-off, or conjoint study to really understand or identify what are these new priorities among our consumers. Among other top worries here that you can see, they center around the well-being of personal and family health. So this new normal of practicing personal hygiene, whether being in-home or out of home, the social distancing would be expected to continue to be in place. In particular, to some countries where their top concerns still evolving around contracting COVID-19, as you can see here. But in addition to these top worries, to some countries at your bottom right-hand corner, countries like Thailand, Singapore, China, and Taiwan, their concerns are actually unable to travel because these are the top outbound tourist countries, actually. So obviously, we see that this may impact the tourism industry for a while. All right, so if we move on, next slide. And we also ask our consumers how they perceive companies to adjust and run their business given the situation. And you can see here, overall, more than 70% perceive that the companies have adapted well under such restricted environment. So if we move on to next slide to see what are the top countries who are seen to have best adjustments, these would be Taiwan, China, and Singapore. These countries are perceived to be well managed in terms of the companies, and could largely be contributed by the government support, actually, because if you've been following the news, Singapore is probably one of the great example where, the government has actively supported, provided job support scheme, even the 9-month wage funding. Lucky for them. And like for China, for example, they were the one who really initiated and encouraged work from home policy. The government also provide good financial assistance to employees or companies. So in my next slide would be among those countries who are somewhat sort of with good adjustments. And these are countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Japan, and Korea. These countries are actually seen to be quite adaptive and agile. And, they worked well with the government. They were proactive. They were adapting to the situations. They actually adopted a work from home policy and utilizing new remote tech solutions to cater for their work. On my next slide would be those countries who are perceived to be sort of somewhat slower adjustment. This would be Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines. From what we have found in our research, consumers actually felt that the government in these countries have somewhat unclear policies to guide companies in operations. And perhaps with these countries, consumers also see that, they were of slower adaptations, and perhaps even they were lacking of remote work capabilities as well. So what we see again here in terms of implications, importance for corporations or company to certainly have BCP in mind. So that's a business continuity plan. Perhaps even, wanting to look into investment in IT support, training, so on and so forth for their employees too. Okay, so moving on to my next slide. This is an interesting one. So we also assess what are the changes in consumers' priorities. So as you can see here, top priority is actually to lead a healthier lifestyle. Before COVID, there was already trending, especially in APAC market, of H&B trending. H&B is health and beauty trending. So I guess beauty trend may slow down a little bit, but we can expect health trend to continue and pick up even further after this. On other top priority includes hygiene aspects, where there is certainly a redefinition of personal to household hygiene, whether being in home or as well as on the go as well. So industries such as retailers, hospitality, F&B services, would probably need to have clear preventive measures, protocols in place. FMCGs may also definitely looking into NPDs, new product developments, so that the consumer can resonate with all these new need states. Also, financial is another among our top priority. This means consumer will lean towards watching their spending, expenditure, planning for future. So there is a tendency to behave quite conservatively from this point onwards. But in specific to some countries, as you can see on the right-hand side here, job security and uptaking new skill sets are also some top priorities among these countries. Already this shows that consumers are seeking other means of future security and perhaps even, looking out for other sources of income. Okay, so next section, I will be talking about how pandemic has impact on the consumer behavior. So next slide, I'll be talking about this new normal. What is this new normal notion? So basically, from both regional as well as specific to certain countries, we asked them, and we have seen that what are the activities they have engaged in more during the COVID time. And this would include in-home activities, obviously to no surprise. But therefore, consumers are seeking in-home products and assistance. And there would be certainly importance of e-solutions in home for edutainment, being education or entertainment at home, as well as working from home. But more interestingly, we also asked for the wish list, what they would like to do post-COVID on the bottom left-hand side. As you can see, consumers still have the need to socialize, to go out, to dine out, and to have the freedom of movement. And certainly, after all this time staying at home, consumer would still need the retail therapy. So, to go out, to dine in, to have social activities. All these offline activities will be replaced completely by online. So seamless integration of online or offline customer journey will certainly be something that brands should consider of importance. Only a few countries have travel on their wish list post-COVID. Hence, I think we can expect tourism or airlines to likely stay down for a while, given the restriction to travel. However, though, we've already been saying that most vacations will be likely to be in-country or like staycation, where it's already happening with some hotels. So that will give rise to local tourists. There will be a new target segment for local hospitality sector as well. Okay. So on my next topic, it will be on tourism and travel. So in terms of country, our consumer wish to travel post-COVID. Japan is our top destination, to no surprise. But interestingly, which are not shown on here, China and Hong Kong are among the least preferred on the list as their traveling destination as of this point. So given the recent second or the subsequent waves of COVID in some of our countries, international traveling is likely to be delayed. And I think even among some stabilizing COVID countries like Thailand, we've seen that imported new COVID cases is also a significant variable and concern. So again, to say countries opening up to cater for tourism. So I guess it would be a bit of a difficult time for airlines and tourism industry, but we should be looking into diverting this to cater for domestic or local travelers or local tourism. All right, so on my next topic, this is also quite an interesting one. So given the pandemic, we've seen an increase in e-wallets or cashless electronic payment adoption throughout our region, especially among our Southeast Asian countries, as you can see on your right-hand side. However, like for China, we know China was like one of the biggest market for e-wallet pre-COVID or before. They also have increased such adoption given the incidents. And what we have found in our study was that it was dramatically increased among the older generation. So what we can expect is actually such behavior will likely to continue and sustain into the future. All right, so on my last topic today, I'll be talking a little bit about financial and banking needs. So from the regional perspective, given this unpredictable time, there is a tendency to consider planning for investment or diversify their income sources. But obviously, some country or for some, they will stay put, maintaining their saving and investment. Interestingly, we have found, in particular to Southeast Asian countries or markets, there is a higher tendency on investment alternatives and effective financial planning. So people are actually looking out to do some, new investment alternatives. So for like Southeast Asia, combination of investment saving needs may be good opportunity. For example, like life insurance products that can cater for short to longer term investments, obviously with protection as well, can be seen as future security as well. And especially in some of these Southeast Asian countries, social health insurance or pension schemes are seen not to be so adequate at the moment. All right, so that concludes my presentation for today. So allow me to rejoin back with Laura and Mei Wai.
Well, so Mei Wai, it's back to me and you for the wrap up.
Yes, we can look at each other.
We can look at each other, indeed. Well, with the sharing just now, I think we have overachieved what we wanted to achieve in 1 hour's time. And it's an exceptional session. Particular shout out to all those who have asked us intelligent questions. Again, if your question has not been answered and if you would like to reach out to us with your questions, simply email your question to the 2 email addresses that are being typed in the chat box. And we will make sure that it goes to the relevant party or speaker. So 5 minutes unto show close, why don't we both share one takeaway from today's show? You first.
Wow, Laura, that's a really tough one. But I will share something around associations, okay? When I saw Dolly presenting the slide, with the pots and pans and the TV, cooking and watching TV, and bearing in mind that in the second wave, for like you're locked down again, and also the fact that most people will be continuing to work from home. I see that this consumer behavior for our internal and external customer could lead rise to a demand for a very unique and different kind of leader, an inspiring leader that will need to be more nimble, entrepreneurial, empathetic, because the people have to also balance their families and health, right? And very importantly, I would like to say responsibility is very important because of the social responsibility aspect, and integrity. The leader would need to be a conscious leader with virtues and morals. Why? Because we're going to go into, and we are already heavily into a world of digitalization, machines, AIs, data. So decisiveness with the integrity is very important for all of us globally. Most important of all, I think I vision the leader to be pretty cool and enjoying his or her, very important, digital sports on the weekend during their time, their free time. So that's my
Ah.
picture that I get at the end of the program.
Well, I think you mentioned about the traits of the new leaders, or the new type of leaders that the world needs. I think from my takeaway, even though we're looking at hard facts and data, what I feel is that we will be required to have an emotional stability if we were to lead either an organization, a city, or even a family, because the external changes are so rapid and so unpredictable. So in order for us to be able to navigate and to, really hold hands together, and we will be required to have an ability to maintain a good emotional state, and maybe sometimes to realize and to verbalize the fact that this is something that we have not been through, and we would like to go through it together. Some sort of an authentic, stable emotion, I think, is quite required. And I think that's also one of the reasons why you and I have come together in the past month and a half to put together this platform, because we felt that the world needs to be connected in ways that would facilitate or help each other, to be more, to be more in tune with who we are, in tune with our purpose, and in tune with the force for good. So I think that's my key takeaway. Well, in the interest of time, I think we would give our viewers a sneak peek of our next round of program. Yes, there will be an episode 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6. The second episode, now that we have looked at from a macro perspective into the data, consumer behavior, and data from 11 markets, our next topic would be on the pulse of organizational change. And we have a very enticing topic. It's called, which half do we keep? Right? So if you're in the industry of F&B, travel, hotel, factory, textile, if you're interested in listening to how organizations are adapting to change, make sure you tune into our next episode. We'll also be diving in our future episodes into more focused industries, categories, and speaking with C-levels and CEOs about their own change experience. So I do hope that you will stay tuned and support us on APAC Change Insider. And with that, I would like to thank quite a few people. Rolling credits. I would first like to thank Mei Wai for calling in from Singapore, for our hard work together for the past month and a half, and more
My
interesting episodes to come. And our team of support from both sides, actually from 3 sides, from Dolly's part as well. I would like to particularly thank Dolly from Acorn Marketing and Research. You have done a spectacular job in shedding light on consumer behavior, and we hope to bring you back in a future show. We would also like to thank our live broadcast partner based in Hong Kong, A-Match Productions. We've done a few rehearsals, and you guys have been great. 多謝晒 A-Match Production. Thank you. And of course, our digital yes, and our digital registration partner, Seamless Communication, and of course, my team at Lighthouse, who is now based in the studio, helping us maneuver the different technologies. Again, if you have any comments, feedback, please do tell us. Email us in the email addresses that you see in the chat box. Otherwise, Mei Wai, it's 9:10 p.m. here in Hong Kong, same in Singapore. Why don't we say goodbye and good night to everyone?
Goodbye.
All
Good night.
right. Goodbye.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
watching. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye. Take care.